Hi everybody, welcome back to Jenkins Boat Works. I am Chuck Jenkins. In this boat building episode, we are going to continue working on the Freedom 17 canoe. That is this canoe right here, and I have over the last couple of months accumulated some video clips. Honestly, sanding is boring. But it's a necessary evil, and if you want the kind of finish that we are achieving, then I hope to be able to show you some kind of tips and tricks, different methods that I've used to get into these curves in the inside and to get a really smooth finish that is now ready for, well, I just put on the first coat of varnish here just a couple of minutes ago. So I'm very pleased with how it's coming out, and we're glad you're back. If you're new to the channel, would you consider subscribing? We have an awful lot of different boat building projects on the channel, and so if you'll kind of dig around in the channel, you'll be able to maybe find different various projects that you might find interesting, and or just find particular episodes on any project that answer questions or concerns that you have with your own project. The whole purpose of this channel is to help other people that are working on similar projects. So again, we're glad you're here. Let's jump in and see how we can get the inside of this thing sanded out so we can be ready to get it finished. What I'm using here is a fest tool, and I have a flexible sanding pad. See that? See how it, and this didn't come with it. I had to order it separately. I think it was about $25. But what it allows is for this to flex so that I can get into these curves in here so that we can just sand. I'm using 80 grit, and part of the trick with this is to let the sander do the work. So there's a tendency to go back and forth like you're sanding it by hand, and that's rather pointless. If you don't push down too hard, it'll spin faster and do its work. And so obviously that's what we want. So now that I've got my hose and my dust collection on here, the pieces that I got from Rockler, and I can't highly enough recommend them. So anyway, it's a bit of a trick, and so you get in here and you just start sanding and try to get any drips off, get it smooth without sanding into the cloth. That's the trick. So I have successfully videoed maybe 15, 20 minutes of work, and I'm barely scratching the surface. So this will take probably 4 to 6 hours at the least to get us to a point where we can clean it up and then see where we are and see if we then need to do more. And we'll wipe it down with water and alcohol solution to get the residual dust out. And then when we wipe it down and spray it down, then you can really see where you're not done. So anyway, we'll take it on down to 120, and then maybe 180 grit. And that'll probably be enough for the inside. You know, especially in the bottom, I don't want this so super slick that when you when it gets a little bit wet, you're trying to get in the canoe or you walk in it or whatever, that you slip. Certainly we don't want that. So actually there's a bit of forgiving grace in that you can leave a little bit of roughness in there, just almost for a non-skid type surface. So anyway, it's boring, but it's very therapeutic at the same time. And part of the trick with getting a really nice finish is to just take your time, enjoy the process, and you get to a point where then when you do put varnish on it, you'll get a beautiful finished product. So we're back to work on the Freedom 17 canoe, and we've done a lot of sanding with the orbital sander, by hand, and also with this little mouse sander up here. It really is quite smooth in here, and there's a temptation to say we're good, but if you see these what look like sparkles in here, we got to try to get that sanded out. It's especially bad right there. Places back up in there. And the whole trick is we need to try to not sand into the cloth. See a little spot right there where we actually have touched the cloth. We should be able to, see right there? We should be able to varnish over that, but where it looks like sparkles is where there are actually little pits. So I've been using 120, and I think we're gonna go to like 180 now and see if we can just clean up some of the rest of that. I really like this mouse sander because the way the curves are in here, it's extremely difficult, especially with the orbital sander, even with the flex pad on it, to get in these little places. The only problem with this, and you can see, is I'm wearing around on the edges of here. And it's because when I get into a spot like this, I'm actually taking the sander at an angle to where I don't have it full flat on. There's two tricks with that though. The part of the problem with that is that you can dig in, and you don't want to do that, and you don't want to get into the cloth. I don't have a way to suck dust out of this, so the next thing I got to do is I just got to take the vacuum and just clean out all this dust that's in here. So once we do that, then we should be able to again see if there's places where it's sparkly, or in other words, where it's got little divots. I can still see some kind of shining at me in here in places that I didn't get. It's just a painstaking process, and you just got to keep at it. So we'll take the vacuum and clean things up. On this, I'm just using my shop vac, and I've got a little brush head on it so I don't scratch the inside of the canoe. And this cleans it up very effectively. Now I still have quite a bit more to pull out of there just to sand or to vacuum out, but I want to show you something else. I've got a mixture here of about a quarter alcohol, denatured alcohol, and then the rest is water. And I put alcohol in there because it'll help it evaporate and dry faster. But if I come in here and spray in here where I've just done this and where I vacuumed, it'll do two things. It's going to help me get the rest of the dust out of there, and it's really going to clean it up better, and I can see what it should look like when there's varnish on there. That is beautiful. And we're rapidly getting to a point where we're going to be good. I've got this zoomed in really close. We've sanded this down to 120, and it's still just messy in there. So I'm going back to my orbital sander here, this Festool. That gives you an idea how much I'm zoomed in. And see, we'll go to 180 now, 180 grit. And I'm using the serious grit that's specifically for the Festool sander, and see if we can't get some of that knocked out. We'll zoom back out. It's harder to see it, obviously, but we need to just try to get that out of there. And if we can't get it out of here with the 180, we may be putting another thin coat of epoxy in here and redoing the whole thing. All right, we'll see. I don't know if we're making any progress at all. I'm gonna wipe this out with some alcohol and water. And I'm really just kind of testing. I haven't done the whole thing. I'm just gonna maybe take this on up to 220 and see if we can get this just little shiny parts out of this. I'm gonna wipe it out first. You wipe it out like that, and it looks pretty good. Here, you see like residue. And I can see it in the camera, but I can't see it when I'm looking in here. I'm gonna try an actual cloth instead of the paper towel. See if this makes it a little cleaner. Yeah, I may have gained some ground. I'm gonna let that dry just for a minute, and then we'll try the 220 on there. Okay, so I've let this dry pretty good, and even using that cloth instead of paper towel, I can still feel some grit. So I'm gonna take the cat cloth, and we're gonna try to wipe that out of there. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere. I'm going to change out this paper. Now I'm going to save this. This is the 180. And I just used it for a minute, and if this works, I'm going to have to go over the whole thing with the 180 and then go down to the 220. Here is this serious grit paper that's specifically for the Fest tool. And here's the 220. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make some light pencil marks in here so I can see where I am. And I've kind of done from here to here. So that's where I'm going to use the 220 and see how we come out. Even with the vacuum, I'm still wearing a dust mask. Wearing a mask before it was cool. All right, let's see how we did. I like having the pencil marks in there because you can really see where you got to. I'm so afraid to try to put varnish in there if we're not ready for it, even as good as it looks when it's wet, which is what it should look like when the varnish is in there. I don't want it to fisheye. I made my little fisheyes. Because then if you start putting varnish in there and you're not ready for it, then you just got problems. So we'll let this dry for a minute, and then we'll take some close-up shots to see if we're down to where we need to be. And if so, we'll go back to the 180, do the whole thing, and then come back over it again with the 220. You sure see this is where I didn't get up here. So we're going to have a way to see if we've made progress. I think we have. Let it dry and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so I've let that dry. And your hand is the ultimate tool. You can feel if you've got it or not. What I feel is grit. Maybe you can see on my fingers a little bit of residue there. So let's wipe that out with this tack cloth. Now let's see if we can feel it. Oh yeah, that's picking it up. Okay, so that's good. Half the trick with this is keep cleaning it out. You got to keep cleaning it out because you can't see where you're at otherwise, and you can't feel it. I'm going to zoom in here real quick. Okay, I'm zoomed in really tight, and this is where we now have gone down to the 220. See on the edge over here? I didn't do that. So in comparison, see there's still some places like in here. If I go on up, now you can really see the difference between here and back down here. So that tells me that I can definitely come through here with the 180. Now we're going to come up to the other end here where we didn't do. See up here? I believe that's going to do it. Feeling good about that. I think I've got a plan. And I don't think I'm going to have to put another coat of epoxy in here. And quite honestly, I don't really want to. Not just because of the extra work, but I already had about 3 fill coats in here on top of the weave anyway. So it makes me think that we're going to be able to finish it out doing it this way. Ha, that's great. Ultimate sanding, ultimate sanding. Well, all right. We got the first coat of varnish in here. All the sanding has paid off. What you did not see are the hours and hours that I spent getting it down to a point where I was good enough with it to go ahead and start applying the finish. Sanding is obviously very boring, but necessary. And so the editing on this video has cut out literally hours, but I'm very happy with it. I did use this time, I used this Helmsman spar urethane, and I went with the clear gloss, and I really do like how it just went in so smooth. We didn't have a lot of trouble with brush marks. I did use a very nice brush, but yeah, we're good. I'm very pleased. We're at a point now where we can start working on the gunnels and the seats and thwarts and the decks, and we'll do more video as we get on into that part of it. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. If you like the video, remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.